Hi there, I'm Jackie from Bloom Property Management, and I wanted to share a very fun way to get educated on some environmentally friendly practices with you. So I was at Brewtown the other day and having a fun time out with family, and I happened to notice that beside the car park at Brewtown Upper Hutt is a swale. Now, not many people know what swales are, but they're awesome bits of engineering. And essentially it is a ditch, right? It's not much more complicated than that. It's a ditch that's not designed to flow but hold water, so they tend to be dug on contour. And I've done some on my farm and they work fantastically to catch surface water, hold it and let it soak into the ground very slowly over time, so it reduces the amount of flooding that occurs in particular areas. It also helps recharge groundwater, which is important for your springs and that kind of stuff, but it also helps rivers flow for more, better for longer. So if you're ever in an area where you see a river is drying up in summer, it has less water flow, that's because there's not much groundwater in the area. If the river is pretty constant with its flow summer and winter, either you've got consistent rain or you've got good groundwater, and that's simply that the water has soaked into the ground and it's slowly trickling out into that watercourse and feeding it year round, which is fantastic for the invertebrates and fish and everything else that live in that river. So this swale at Brewtown, it was just beside a car park, so it had a lot of hard surface area that obviously washed into it, and it did have an overflow valve, so it would have been taking some water off and feeding that into the stormwater system, but the rest of it was allowed to soak into the land, and it had water-loving plants planted in the bottom of that swale. Fantastic bit of kit there, well worth going and having a look at. So if you're going into Brewtown, check out the far side of the car park from the main buildings and have a look at a swale. It's something that's really easy to do. You don't need to have the complicated plumbing on it. You can simply put it in any of your properties where you've got room for it to take any runoff from hard surfaces like driveways or even surplus roof water. It's a great way of slowing it down. And why is this important? Well, apart from feeding the soil and all the good stuff there, it also reduces flooding. So if we have a storm event and we have a lot of rain all coming down at once, if we've got a very efficient stormwater network, we're all putting that water into a very small area at the same time, and that's too much for that system, so things back up and things overflow and we get flooding. If we're retaining that water through swales or stormwater tanks on people's houses, which is a fantastic idea in itself, we're slowing that down and reducing the peak height of water in a storm, and that means we get less flooding. So if we, in addition to swales, we can put rainwater tanks on properties, and this is now part of the building code where I live, so any new builds need to have a minimum sized water tank which is going to catch rainwater and slow it down. It's called a detention tank because it detains the water, it slows it down before it gets released into the system. That's opposed to a retention tank, which is for reusing water, so retention, reuse, and that's for things like drinking water or flushing toilets or washing the car or watering the garden. Also really useful, and frankly I think in our environment, because we live on the ring of fire, we are part of an earthquake zone, we are likely to encounter a major disaster that will mean that we're dependent on water that we collect ourselves. So a rainwater tank on every property is a fantastic idea for our own civil defence preparedness, as well as reducing the extent of flooding. So there's some things to think about for your properties. If you're doing improvements at home or on investment properties, think about swales and rainwater tanks.